Start by finding yourself a brown paper bag, any size, but make sure it easily fits over your entire head. You cannot be seen rooting for these teams. Now grab a marker and use the bottom of your cup to trace 2 large eye holes. Go ahead and cut them out. Place the bag firmly over your head. You are now officially ready for today's Not Top 5 list of the worst NFL teams of all time. The 1972-1973 Houston Oilers. Head coach Bill Peterson was in way over his head, taking over the Oilers in the early 70s. But what he did bless us with was the original all-time losing streak. The Oilers won 2 shocking upsets against the Jets and Colts, but in between those 2 wins were 18 straight losses. The Oilers weren't particularly good at anything. They ranked second to last in both offense and defense. In their first season with Peterson, they lost by over 3 scores a game. However, no loss was worse than the embarrassing thumping they took at the hands of the Cincinnati Bengals. The 61-17 loss was the 3rd most points ever scored in a game. Things didn't get better for Peterson's Oilers in 1973 either. They started the season worse than 72, going 0-5 with a 20-point losing margin. This was enough for owner Bud Adams, who canned Peterson. His replacement, legendary coach Sid Gilman, didn't fare much better. They only won a single game with an upset over the Colts. The Oilers just lacked the talent to compete in the much stronger NFL that they joined in 1970, and it showed. They were outmatched every week. They also threw 2 interceptions for every touchdown they got. Listen to that again, 2 picks per TD, not the other way around. That would just not fly in today's league, and neither did the Houston Oilers in 72 and 73. 1981 Baltimore Colts. You'll notice that bad defense is a recurring theme among all of these teams, but there isn't a more historically sad one than the 81 Colts. They allowed 533 points and over 6,700 yards, both NFL records. The 33.3 points allowed per game is still a record, even though offenses have gotten far better in the last 40 years since this terrible team took the field. This wasn't the only putrid numbers the defense became known for. The most touchdowns allowed, 81 Colts. Most first downs allowed? 81 Colts. The least punts forced? Yeah, you guessed it. They opened the season with a win against the New England Patriots by just 1 point, and they wouldn't win another game until they met New England again in the final game of the season. There they beat them by 2 points, setting another record for the narrowest margins of victory in a season. If it weren't for another 2-14 club, the 81 Colts wouldn't have won a game. They lost each game by an average of 17 points. The 81 season also created one of the weirdest stories in the world of football. In the middle of a beatdown, Colts owner Bob Irsay took over play-calling duties from his coach. QB Bart Starr would then call the complete opposite play in the huddle that Irsay wanted. He realized that Irsay was trying to embarrass his own players and coaches, and he refused. The 82 Colts fared just as poorly, notching a winless record in a strike-shortened season. We would say things got better, but it took nearly 2 decades for that to happen. 2016-2017 Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns don't deserve their awesome fan base. Since reforming in 1999, the Dog Pound has cheered on 2 winning teams, but they didn't hit rock bottom until 2016. Hugh Jackson was brought in as head coach to turn around a 3-13 team. Unfortunately, those 3 wins were more than the Browns would have in the next 2 years combined. They started 6 different quarterbacks, with each having as little success as the other. Have you ever heard when somebody says that a team finds ways to win? Well, the Cleveland Browns somehow managed to find ways to lose every Sunday. 2016 brought a 1-15 season. The lone win snapped a 17-game losing streak, only to match it with another 17-game losing streak right after. If you're keeping score at home, you're right. The 2017 Cleveland Browns became only the 2nd team to go 0-16. Hugh Jackson's team was headed backwards. They became the butt end of every joke and half of the memes on the internet. Every game, they topped their own incompetence, blundering bigger and better chances. In the final week of the season, they had the chance to not be etched in history against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers were sitting their starters because they had locked up a playoff spot, but even with most of their starters out, the Browns still screwed up a game-winning drive, ending their historically miserable season. 1976 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers became part of the NFL in 1976 as an expansion team, and nobody has had more rookie hazing than them. The 76 Bucs are the worst offense of all time, scoring a hilarious average of 8.9 points a game while being shut out in 5 games. Oh wait, we forgot something. They went winless. That's right, 0-14. They only scored 125 total points, losing all 14 games by an average of 3 touchdowns. The Bucs have an argument for the best of the worst or the worst of the worst. Regardless, it took the Tampa Bay expansion almost 2 full seasons to win a football game. The Bucs were led by an all-time Florida Gator great at quarterback, Steve Spurrier. Unfortunately for them, Spurrier was better fit in college as both a player and a coach. What's even crazy about their offense ineptitude is that the following year, the Buccaneers scored less points a game than the 76 team. It must have been a challenge to show up to work for an offense that only scored 1 touchdown a game. Now that we think about it, they may have been better off not showing up at all. 26 straight losses is an NFL record no team is trying to best. Tampa Bay would be hands down the worst team of all time if it weren't for a glorious team that somehow lost every contest in a 16-game schedule while looking like an SNL skit the entire time. The 2008 Detroit Lions. 0-16. The Lions were the first team to ever go winless in a 16-game season. The first thing you think of when you hear 0-16 is the Detroit Lions. The name will forever live in infamy. Draped in silver and blue and smelling of unruly stench. Have you ever seen the movie Bad News Bears? Well, the Lions would have made you think it was based on a true story. It was an absolute circus, and no moment symbolized their season more than quarterback Dan Orlovsky running out of the back of his own end zone for a safety. Not only was it the deciding factor in a 12-10 loss, it was perhaps the worst play of this century. As humiliating as it was, the weekly product was even more mortifying. The Lions allowed 32.9 points per game, the second most in a season, and they did it in the most comical ways. Fumbles, interceptions, getting run over, bombs thrown on, special team blunders, you name it. Their opponents doubled their own weekly score, losing each game by an average of 16 points. 3 different quarterbacks started for the Lions during the season, all with the same results: L's. The Lions threw more picks than touchdowns, even with the all-time great receiver Calvin Johnson to throw to. At the end of the season, the Lions cleaned house, firing head coach Rod Marinelli, most of his staff, and general manager Matt Millen. They are the worst team of all time, based solely on the comical and ridiculous ways that they lost. So, what do you guys think? Will there ever be another team as bad as the 08 Detroit Lions? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe for more content. And as always, you're watching Nonstop Sports. We'll catch you next time.